Good morning, friends. Last night was winter solstice, which means that yesterday was both the shortest day of the year and the longest night of the year. And so we have emerged to the other side of that. A lot of churches I know celebrate their Blue Christmas as a kind of longest night service and hold that on December 21st. We held our Blue Christmas service last Wednesday, and it was a real blessing just to be able to hold some sacred space for folks who might not be feeling super merry in this Christmas season for whatever reason. You know, it's been dreary around here the last couple of days, and sometimes just the absence of the sun is enough to affect our mood and to affect our feelings, because feelings really are sort of temporary and fleeting and can be carried along by all kinds of things. The problem is when we begin to really dwell in those and sometimes lean into those rather than trusting things that we know to be true. This is why I think over and over the Bible calls us to remember God's promises, to remember God's faithfulness, so that when we're in a moment where our feelings are overwhelming, where we are anxious and weary and depressed, we can remember that these are not the things that get the last word in our lives, but rather that God is with us, God loves us, God walks with us. He grieves when we grieve, He celebrates when we celebrate, and we never have to walk through any of this alone. This is what we celebrate at Christmas. None of the other world religions have at their center a deity who sends part of His own self to become human, live among us, teach among us, show us how to live and love by example, and then be crucified and raised again on our behalf. Most of the other world religions just have a great teacher who lived and who died. Jesus is different. The incarnation is different. We tend to put a lot of emphasis on Good Friday and a lot of emphasis on Easter and the resurrection, and goodness knows we should celebrate those. But none of those things would have been possible without first the incarnation, the gift of God that we have in Advent. God humbled Himself to send His only Son into the world, not to condemn the world, but that the world through Him might be saved. And what we celebrate in Advent is God's faithfulness in sending Jesus in the first place. And we look at Advent as a season of waiting and anticipation for the fulfillment that the promise that God has given us for the future. That Christ has died, Christ is risen, and Christ will come again. In the meantime, you and I, as believers in Jesus, are called to help usher in the kingdom into the here and in the now. Some days that's harder to think about than others, harder to accomplish than others. But that's what we're called to be and do. We're called to be God's hands and feet of love in the world, in the same way that God shared His love with us in Advent. So I'm praying for you in this season, no matter what you might be feeling, that you'll be able to hang on to the truth to know that you are incredibly loved by God, who knows your name, who rejoices over you, and that you have a calling to share that love with others who are around you. Merry Christmas to you.